Yeah, 10 years ago, I went to Costa Rica rainforest because I wanted to find this leaf mimicking mantis. So I read about it when I was 9 years old, and I just became like utterly obsessed with this mantis. And on the book, it says this mantis is from South America. And as I grew up, I caught glimpses of them on nature documentaries every now and then. But it always felt impossibly far away from me because the word of South America just seemed so distant. I never thought about I would go there one day. But one of my ultimate dreams is to find this mantis in the wild by myself. So in my college years, I worked as a taekwondo instructor and an event and wedding photographer. I even did food delivery for a couple of weeks, just in order for me to save up enough money to buy that flight ticket. So there we go. I arrived San Jose, which is the capital city, and I rented a car. I drove 6 hours straight to the mountains. And it was 4 o'clock by the time I got there, and my plan was pretty simple. I'm just going to live in the mountain until I find mantis. So I got off the car, I dove into the jungle immediately. And I trekked nonstop from 4 p.m. all the way to 5 in the next morning. And it's been like 13 hours of walk, and I literally saw every rainforest creature. I saw this great iguana, basiliscus, and poison-dart frogs, everything. But I just couldn't find a mantis. And I started to doubt myself. I was like, maybe just wrong season, or maybe just having a bad luck. And also, I was trying to cheer myself up, like, okay, yeah, still day one. I got plenty of time. But, walking in the rainforest is hard, it's exhausting, and I was about to throw up. I was too tired. So actually, I was already on the way back to the car, and then I said, no, I can't stop. I don't want to see myself regretting by the end of this journey. So just, come on, keep searching, let's go. So just right after I made that decision, and then I saw the mantis perching on the leaf off-road. I was like, oh my God, is it real? I couldn't believe my eyes. I burst into tears, and I started to scream, and I just literally stared at the mantis for 15 whole minutes. Because, I finally found something that I've been chasing for over a decade, and that mantis is no longer on screen, not on page, but just in front of me. And that's not a story about perseverance pays off or never give up, because I know even little kids know all these lines. What's really magical was the process. Was how I penetrated through this thick foliage. It's how I came across all these bullet ants, anteater, boa constrictor, and vipers, and all the rainforest creature. They weren't just pixels on screen anymore. They turned into living, breathing beings before my eyes. So I had 7 days in the jungle for that trip, and it's still one of my favorite stories, and just kind of opened a whole new chapter of my life, and just make me believe that nature has all the answers. It shows me the hidden wonders of the wild, and reminds me how persistent and remarkable I truly was. So let's fast forward to 2018. It was a gorgeous early morning in deep Amazon forest, and I was there looking for the mantis. And the air was still foggy, everything is wet and quiet, and when I pushed through this damp foliage, something just shimmered out ahead of me. Something was flashing and blinking. So before we jump into that, there's a famous butterfly called the blue morpho butterfly. Yeah, but they're just so well known, not only among insect selectors, but also normal people. And if you look at this picture, I would say, yeah, they're pretty cool, but it's just big blue butterfly, right? I do not think it's that extraordinary or spectacular at all. And their genus name is Morpho. So Morpho is Greek name of Aphrodite, and Aphrodite is Greek goddess of breathtaking beauty. And in Roman, it's Venus. So I didn't really think it makes sense. And Morpho species also bears name from mythological figures like Helena, Deidamia, Menelaus. These are all gods' names. So simply saying these are butterflies of gods. Do you believe? No. So I've read about this butterfly of how incredible they are, but actually none of those pages clicked until I stood there in the Amazon dawn, and just one flash and another and another. The sunlight bounced off their wings and just hit my eyes. And these butterflies were literally glowing. It's like a swarm of twinkling stars floating around me, and I could see this this divine light that's spilling across the whole canopy air. And now I can feel it. I can understand, why those 17th century entomologists named all these butterflies. They are God's butterflies. So all those text descriptions from books will only paint mental pictures, but based on your past cognition. Nothing compares to actually going out, see the world by yourself, right? That's how we connect to this planet. We view and understand this world by what our ears have heard and what our eyes have seen. So it doesn't matter how many books you've read, how many contents you've watched. At the end of the day, it's all about stepping out and see the world with your own eyes. Because nature has all the answers. It shows you this magnificent world that no book could ever capture, and how vividly alive that you can feel. So I went to Queensland, Australia last year. Yeah. Never been there before, so my plan was starting from Cairns all the way to the central part. And turns out it was rainy season. I didn't even know that. And just so many unexpected things that happened. So on Christmas Eve, I was driving through this crazy storm and torrential downpour, and the whole place was flooded when I realized the flooding river just raging across and blocking the road. And there was no bridge, so I either go through the water or I just wait. I couldn't even go back because there were just too many rivers. And it was Christmas Eve, so absolutely no one was around, no service, just total silence and brutal rage of nature. And I would say I got a little bit nervous at first because I had no idea when the water is going to recede. But then I calmed myself. I told myself, okay, yeah, just take it slow, all right? So I sat in my car all night, staring at the flood, watching the water just dragging all those trees and pushing them downstream. And I found myself being unbelievably small, not just physically, but emotionally humbled. And I began to find this pure inner peace inside of me. Because everything surrounding me was like a living poem and crafted by millions of years of natural evolution. So peace will come and find you when you just put yourself into something that is so gargantuan. I really love that word, gargantuan. It means something that is extremely huge. And it's also the name of the black hole in the movie of Interstellar. So the gargantuan black hole is going to suck in everything, even light. Nature works the same. The gargantuan nature is going to absorb every ounce of your stress and all of the negative emotion. So during that journey, I was always in the middle of nowhere. So a lot of those nights, I just sat there, immersed myself into nature, and I could feel the wind, I could hear crickets singing, and I could see the stars, the Milky Way galaxy, and I could see frogs, and sometimes even kangaroos hopping around. And that's just amazing, and that's the peace. Because nature has all the answers. It shows you the power of its vastness and reminds you how calm and resilient you are inside. So once I was in a small indigenous village in West Papua, and one night, I walked through this shallow seawater to a beach by the mangroves. And I was having too much fun exploring myself, and then I totally missed the rising tide. So suddenly I found myself getting stuck on the beach. I couldn't go back. And I just, so I just turned off my headlight. I plopped down on that beach, doing nothing at all, and just letting my mind go totally blank. Because in nature, you don't really need to have a to-do list. Sometimes you just have to embrace those stretches when there is literally nothing you can do. It's awesome to have nothing to do. So that night I was sitting on that beach. I did absolutely nothing. I saw crabs crawling on my skin. I saw fish jumping out of water. And it's pretty amazing. And then I just ask myself a lot of questions. I asked myself who I was. I asked myself some of the silly questions. And I just realized I had all the answers. Nature is like a mirror. Not only a mirror that reflects you, but pulls out the authentic version of you, yourself, buried deep in your heart. So when you're out there, just no one talk to you, but only nature, then you talk to yourself. Remember, I was in Costa Rica, I talked to myself. I was in Australia, I talked to myself. You talk to yourself, you have this vibe of super nonchalant, laid back, and you become so magnetic, all right? Because you're just cool with yourself. So lately, everyone is obsessed with these words like vibe of chilled out or vitality and freedom. You go on to social media, you scroll down, and it's all you can see. Everyone is trying to have that vibe, right? But things that once you start to chase them, it's going to be the second you lose them completely because you're just so attached to the outcome, right? And attachment creates resistance. There is actually nothing you should worry about, right? You might want to say, okay, I sure have nothing to worry about if I'm rich, right? I need to go to work. I got bills to pay. I got like 40 meetings next week. But trust me, even the richest person on earth carries anxiety. Even the most famous singer will panic. The celebrity who's making 50 million a year will go through his sleepless nights. So it doesn't matter who you are. If you're on the journey of chasing something or someone, it's totally fine. Just call it time out. Pause your life. Just go to the wild. Find a grassland, find a stream, and just do nothing. Talk to yourself. Ask dumb questions. Again, nature has all the answers. It shows you the peace of empty stillness and who you really are at your core. Wow. So I was out on this tiny little wooden boat once, and I was thrilled at first, like, yeah, I'm heading to the ocean, yeah. And 10 minutes later, when 2-meter waves were smashing the boat, tossing me around like a piece of toy. And I feel like I was about to fly out of control. And honestly, I was so terrified. I generally thought, this might be it. And then I glanced up. I saw 2 rainbows stretched across the sky to my left, and straight ahead, there was a massive, raging storm. And off to my right hung the most breathtaking sunset I've ever laid my eyes on. I was still shaking in the bouncing waves, but my fears started to vanish. I even talked to myself like, my life's been perfect. Even this might be the last day of my life. I don't care, it's inevitable. I'm just gonna soak up the sunlight, I'm just gonna enjoy the rain and the very moment. So now when I look back, I'm just so glad I didn't waste a single moment living in fear. And nature has all the answers. It shows you life is full of ups and downs, twists and turns, and reminds you to be fully present. So I want all of you to just step out into nature, and you will probably swim alongside sea turtles. You spot katydid that just look like a lobster, and you gaze at a volcano wrapped in morning mist. Or just find a park, spend a half day, do nothing. Okay, find a piece of stone, throw. Okay, do some silly things. Be fully present, because you will know nature has all the answers. Thanks for listening, my awesome people.